DPS stats as a tank? Really? Yup. Hello, and welcome back to the Sarcast. So today we are doing the Paladin Protection Guide for Mists of Pandaria, and today we are looking at talents, glyphs, rotation, stats, and your gemming strategy in preparation for tanking in Mists of Pandaria. Right, so your first tier of talents is your movement speed tier. The first talent then is Speed of Light, which increases your movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds, and that's on a 45-second cooldown. The next talent then is Long Arm of the Law, which whenever you use Judgment will increase your movement speed by 45% for 3 seconds. So whilst in combat, you can have 45% increased movement speed for 50% of the time. And the final choice then is Pursuit of Justice, which has a passive 15% movement speed at all times, plus gains you an extra 5% for every charge of Holy Power you have, up to a maximum of 3, thereby giving you a maximum of 130% movement speed increase. The next tier then is your CC tier. First then is Fist of Justice, which will stun the target for 6 seconds. Next is Repentance, which will CC a target for up to 1 minute. Any damage done will break that CC, of course, but it's only usable against demons, dragonkin, giants, humanoids, and undead. And the third one then is Burden of Guilt, which basically will slow your target when you hit it with your Judgment. The level 45 tier then is your Mitigation tier. First one is more of a holy talent. This dictates that your successful judgments will reduce the cast time and mana cost of your next flash of light by 35% per stack, and improves its effectiveness by 35% when used the heal dollars and stacks up to 3 times. It's more of a holy talent, that one. If you're a Prot Pally, it's recommended not to take that. The other two then are more interesting to Prot. Less so Eternal Flame. It replaces Word of Glory and tacks a heal over time component into your what would otherwise be Word of Glory. The one that most of us will be taking is Sacred Shield. Protects the target with a shield of holy light for up to 30 seconds and absorbs damage and ticks every 6 seconds. That's the one most Prot Pallys are going for. The level 60 tier then, the first one then is Hand of Purity, and that places a hand on a friendly target, reducing damage of harmful periodic effects by 70% for 6 seconds. Basically reduces the damage that dots do on your target. Unbreakable Spirit then, when your Divine Shield, Divine Protection or Lay on Hands are on cooldown, spending Holy Power will reduce the remaining cooldown by 1% per Holy Power spent, up to a maximum of 50% reduction. That will be one that most Prot Pallys will be taking in order to get Divine Shield, Divine Protection, Lay on Hands on a shorter cooldown. That will get your Lay on Hands, which is a 10-minute cooldown, down to about 5 minutes in the course of a fight, so you can use Lay on Hands potentially twice in the course of a 5-minute fight, 5-6 minute fight or so. The third one then is Clemency, which is useful if you're a big user of the different Paladin hand spells. You can use Hand of Freedom, Protection, Sacrifice and Salvation twice before incurring their cooldown. So like I said, Unbreakable Spirit there is by far the winner. The next tier then is your Holy Power tier. First one up is Holy Avenger. Abilities that generate Holy Power will deal 30% additional damage and healing, and generate 3 charges of Holy Power for the next 18 seconds. So pretty much like the old Retribution Zealotry talent. Next up then is Sanctified Wrath, which changes differing on your spec. It makes Avenging Wrath last 50% longer, and grants more frequent access to one of your abilities while it lasts. So for Holy it will reduce the cooldown of your Holy Shock by 50%. For Ret it will reduce the cooldown of your Hammer of Wrath by 50%. But for Prot, it will reduce the cooldown of your Judgment by 50%, and Avenging Wrath also increases healing received by 20%. The one I've gone for there is Divine Purpose though. Abilities that cost Holy Power have a 25% chance to cause the Divine Purpose effect, and Divine Purpose basically means that your next Holy Power ability will consume no Holy Power and will cast as if 3 Holy Power were consumed, and that lasts for 8 seconds. So that gives you a free Shield of the Righteous or a free Word of Glory. The final tier then at level 90, this is your damage/healing tier as well. The first one then is Holy Prism, and that sends a beam of light towards a target, turning them into a prism for holy energy. If an enemy is the target, they'll take holy damage and radiate healing to nearby allies within 15 yards. And if a friendly target is the target, they're healed and radiate damage to nearby enemies within 15 yards. The next one then is Light's Hammer. That will hurl a light infused hammer into the ground where it will blast a 10-yard area with arcing light for 16 seconds. That will deal damage to nearby enemies within the area and healing to allies within the same area, and that's on a 1-minute cooldown. The one most of us will be going for is Execution Sentence. A hammer slowly falls from the sky, causing holy damage over 10 seconds. Damage is dealt slowly at first and increases over time, culminating in a final burst of damage. If it's used on a friendly target, that damage is then converted, of course, to healing. So the ones I went for in my build were Speed of Light, which gives you the burst of movement for 8 seconds. Fist of Justice, which will stun the target for 6 seconds. Sacred Shield, which will absorb damage and needs refreshed every 30 seconds. Unbreakable Spirit, which will reduce the cooldown on your Divine Shield, Protection and Lay on Hands. Divine Purpose to give you the free Shields of the Righteous or Words of Glory. And then Execution Sentence, which is being simmed to be the best healing and DPS talent in the level 90 tier. So Glyphs have changed again. There are no Prime Glyphs now. They've been a Cataclysm only feature and have been removed. The major glyphs are the ones that are going to change your abilities in meaningful ways. The minor ones then are all your cosmetic stuff, all the fun stuff. One really that you need to take is Glyph of the Alabaster Shield, which basically states your successful blocks will increase the damage of your next Shield of the Righteous by 20%, and that stacks up to 3 times. So that will basically make your Shield of the Righteous deal a hell of a lot of damage, especially with a full stack of Vengeance. The only other real changes are Divine Protection, whereas in Cataclysm it used to be 20% physical and 20% magical damage reduction, and you had to glyph that to gain 40% magical reduction and 0% physical reduction. It's changed completely about in Mists. Now by default it gives 40% magical damage reduction, and you need to glyph it to get the physical damage reduction component at the cost of half of the magical damage reduction. The other one then of note is Consecration, which will allow you to target your Consecration spell, Death and Decay style. So instead of Consecration popping up under your feet wherever you're standing, when you hit your Consecration button, you will get a targeting reticule, which will allow you to place your Consecration where it gets put down, which is useful for picking up incoming adds and so on. The only other one really to look at would be Glyph of the Battle Healer, which will heal nearby allies for 30% of the damage you're doing, which when you're tanking the boss and you're doing a lot of damage can convert to quite a bit of healing. The only other real glyph to mention would be the Shield of Righteous Retreat, which is basically Bubble Hearth. So whenever you Divine Shield, the cast time on your Hearthstone gets reduced in half and will allow you to Bubble Hearth again. Like I said, the minors are basically all cosmetic ones, so it's just really pick your flavour there. So rotation wise, your main holy power generating abilities are going to be Crusader Strike / Hammer of the Righteous, Judgment and a procced Avenger Shield. So rotation wise then, you will initially be using Hammer of the Righteous to get up the Weakened Blows debuff on the target. That will reduce the damage that your target deals by 10% for 30 seconds. So it's crucial you get that on the target immediately. That will generate 1 holy power and it is on a 4.5 second cooldown. You will alternate that then with 2 fillers. Judgment will generate holy power, as will a procced Avenger Shield. Your other fillers then are Sacred Shield whenever it needs refreshed, and Consecration. Now Consecration is freely usable because the mana cost has been reduced significantly since Cataclysm, and is now a core part of our rotation again, as it was in Wrath. Damage of Crusader Strike versus Hammer of the Righteous. Crusader Strike does about twice the damage of Hammer of the Righteous, but it doesn't really hit as hard as it used to do. Holy Wrath, which is a prot only ability now, will basically do twice as much damage as your Crusader Strikes on a single target. If you're doing AoE on multiple targets, your Holy Wrath will get split between all the targets. But single target, Holy Wrath is actually more hard hitting than Crusader Strike. So basically your rotation is going to be Crusader Strike or Hammer of the Righteous, depending on if you need that Weakened Blows debuff refreshed. With the liberal use of Judgment, Holy Wrath, Avenger Shield and Consecration. And of course refreshing Sacred Shield when it needs refreshed. Your other abilities, at level 87, you get Blinding Light, which is a 6-second disorient on all enemies within 10 yards, and damage done will obviously break that again. and then whatever your level 90 tier talent was that you'd taken. So obviously Execution Sentence was what I had taken there. So stats wise, complete changeabout from Cataclysm. Surprise, surprise. As of Mists, Paladin tanks are looking to pretty much get rid of avoidance. Yes, that sounds completely counterintuitive because we were all about dodge, parry, and especially mastery in Cataclysm in order to get ourselves block capped. However, block capping is not working in Mists and won't work ever again likely. Basically, Blizzard waited until the next expansion in order to rectify that problem as they saw it. The stats really that we're looking for now are pretty much DPS stats: hit, expertise, haste, yes, some mastery still in order to try and increase the amount you block for. What you really want to be doing is hitting everything as hard as you can, as often as you can, and reducing the chances that you're going to be dodged, parried, or that you're going to miss your target. You want to be making sure that you are hitting and generating holy power in order to spend on either Shield of the Righteous to get the 30% damage reduction for 3 seconds, or Word of Glory. Now whenever you use Shield of the Righteous, you will gain a stack of something called Bastion of Glory, and that will stack up to 5 times. And basically what Bastion of Glory does is increase the amount that your Word of Glory heals for. Word of Glory on its own will heal for about 9,000 on 1 charge of holy power. On a full 3 stack of holy power with 5 stacks of Bastion of Glory, Word of Glory can heal for over 100k. Depending, it's affected by Vengeance, so depending on what your Vengeance level is at the time, if you're tanking the boss, obviously you're going to get a big heal out of Word of Glory with 5 stacks of Bastion of Glory. You still have your other cooldowns such as Guardian of Ancient Kings, Divine Shield, Divine Protection, Ardent Defender. So still use those liberally whenever needed. Lay on Hands, of course, you still have as well with a 10-minute cooldown, which it can, of course, be reduced by the talent. So what you want to be concentrating on is getting hit capped at 7.5% hit. Get hard capped on expertise, which is 15% expertise, because it was initially thought by the theory crafters that 7.5% expertise would do, but that didn't account for the amount of parries that would happen, thereby negating your ability to generate holy power in a reliable manner. So make sure you're getting hit capped, hard expertise capped, and then pick up whatever haste and mastery you can as well, because you want to be lowering the cooldown on your Crusader Strike, Judgment, etc., which all get reduced. Their GCD gets reduced by haste now. So haste will come in handy to reduce the cooldown on your abilities, and therefore obviously allow you to get more often within a certain set time period. So the thinking really is now, rather than block capping and mitigating most of or all of the damage incoming, you really want to be using Shield of the Righteous as often as possible. That's why I took Divine Purpose, in order to get free Shields of the Righteous now and again. But you want to be making sure that you're keeping up that Shield of the Righteous buff as much as you can. It lasts for 3 seconds, so to generate the holy power that you need to use Shield of the Righteous, you will need to generate 3 holy power, which will take 4.5 seconds. So you're not going to have the Shield of the Righteous buff up all the time, so there will be spike damage throughout Mists. This is something that the healers have to get used to. If you're a new healer as of Cataclysm or Mists, you won't be used to the spike damage model. Stacking hit and expertise will smooth out the biggest spikes, because you're going to have Shield of the Righteous guaranteed to be up as often as you possibly can. Parry and dodge really are very minimally effective now. You could dump a lot of parry and it wouldn't really tell as percentage on your character sheet. Generally speaking, you're going to have twice as much parry as you have dodge, and then your block will be twice that again. At the moment I have 7.5% dodge, just over 13% parry, and just short of 30% block. Those stats, even with decent gear, won't change a hell of a lot. Mastery will increase your block chance again, but it won't be anywhere near as good as it was in Cataclysm. So essentially reforge out of any parry and dodge you have on gear, put it into hit until you get the 7.5%, and then any remaining parry and dodge, reforge that into expertise until you hit the hard cap there. Gemming strategy then for Mists of Pandaria. One thing and one thing only: stamina. Stamina stacking is back in a major way in this expansion. It was the style in Wrath to gain as much health as you possibly can. that was to survive spike damage, and because spike damage is back, it's going to be the same in Mists of Pandaria. You basically want to have as much health as you possibly can in order to survive the biggest spikes. Tanks geared to heroic level at the moment, so around about 460 or so. They are sitting with about 480k health. And raid geared, you're going to have well over 500,000. Even in Cataclysm, block capping was all about effective health. If you were reducing all damage incoming by 30%, that was effectively giving you 30% extra health to survive damage. So because we're not block capping anymore, and we're not able to block cap anymore, stamina stacking is the way to go. Once again, if you used to tank in Wrath, you'll be used to that. But for new tanks as of Cataclysm, you want to get as many blue gems in there as you can. Any enchants that will give you extra stamina, basically pile on the health as much as you possibly can. You want to be able to take the hits and live through them, because the point is to live through the biggest spikes. So, the TLDR version of all that, really, at the end of the day, is primary concern is get hit capped, get hard expertise capped, gain as much health as you possibly can, stamina, 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 gem fort, enchant fort, get it any way you can. In combat, maintain your Shield of the Righteous buff as often as you can. If you're capped on hit and hard capped on expertise, it should be up at least 50% of the time. Also, don't forget to maintain your weakened blows debuff on the target. That's essential you keep that up in order to reduce your target's physical damage by 10% at all times. Also, if you have taken the Sacred Shield talent, which you should have done, make sure that's maintained all the time. You will have empty GCDs every now and again, so use your empty GCDs to refresh your Sacred Shield buff. Every little bit of mitigation helps. Threat-wise, in this expansion we look to be fine so far. Because of the changes to Vengeance, tank DPS with high Vengeance is better than most of the DPS currently. However, towards the end of the expansion I don't see that being the case, and I do foresee DPS who are now starting to do round about 100k DPS will be putting at least 250k DPS by the expansion's end. Tanks doing DPS of around about 100k round at the minute in raids won't really go much higher than that. And for food and flasks, just pick whatever stats you're short of, be it stamina, hit or expertise. If you need a bit of haste, use a bit of haste food, but just generally use your buff food and flasks to top off the stats that you're a little bit short on. So that's it for the Protection Paladin guide for Mists of Pandaria. If there are any major changes in the future with future patches, I will revisit this. However, for now, that's everything. Cheerio!
Do you think the expansion will make me fat?